Coming up on Focal Point, it's Election Day.
Pandemic and threats to your life and recall attempts and violent year flooding events and demonstrations for racial justice. Why on earth do you want to keep doing this? And the answer is simple. Tough times call for tough people, right?
Yes, I think we left everything on the field. We did as much as we possibly could, talked to everybody across the state that we could. I feel good about today.
I'm very optimistic that voters are going to choose to change direction.
Open-minded, progressive, or Democratic person in a place like the East Coast or the West Coast, to do that here is an act of courage every single day.
At least I'm hopeful that this year there'll be a big push with young voters coming out and voting today.
This special election night edition of Focal Point starts now. Hello and welcome to the special election night program from the campus of Michigan State University. We are live here in the Communication Arts and Sciences building.
In the next hour, we'll take you around the state and recap events leading up to tonight's vote. It's just after 8 p.m. and the polls are officially closed.
We will start our coverage live from the Ingham County building in Mason. That's where we find Focal Point's Joe Hicks. Joe, I'm sure the day is just beginning for the county clerk.
Thanks, Elena. It's a little after 8 p.m., which means the polls are now closed. And earlier today, I had the chance to talk to Ingham County Clerk Barb Byram. With all the election season commotion, she almost wasn't able to meet with me. However, I did catch her for a few minutes, and this is what she had to say. So inside the Ingham County Courthouse here with Barb Byram. So Barb, it's been a busy day. What's that been looking like?
It's been looking like people are engaged to exercise their right to vote.
Awesome. And what is tonight going to be looking like for you? Obviously, the polls close at 8, but that doesn't mean your job's over.
Right. My job is definitely not over. I've been working on this election for 2 months. I'll continue to work on this election probably for another month and a half. So results, unofficial results, will come to me tonight or sometime tomorrow morning. And then the Board of Canvassers, which is 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, will meet starting at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. And we'll meet on the 3rd floor here in the Board of Commissioners room to go through the entire election, canvass the election, and ultimately certify the results. But when the results are certified, the election's still not done, as candidates have an opportunity to file for a recount, so there could be recounts. And then after that time has passed, then we will start doing audits of the November election. Keep in mind, I've already received questions that are going to appear on the May election. So elections is not a one-day event, it is an all-year event.
Wonderful. Are you going to be happy when it's over?
Well, you know, the next one has already started, so it's never really over.
Quick turnaround.
Yes.
And what's the rest of the year looking like then?
The rest of the year is looking like probably a procedural audit, which is laid out in statute, as well as potential recounts, and getting ready for the next election.
As you can see, the clerk's office is extremely busy making sure every ballot is accounted accordingly. Elena, Alex, back to you.
Thanks so much, Joe. Of course, so many questions will be answered tonight and in the next couple of days. One of them will be about voter turnout, specifically for Generation Z.
A specific group could tip election results to favor one political party, and some MSU students fall into that category. Here is my in-depth look at Gen Z voters.
We have the form right here.
For some, registering to vote is a rite of passage.
It's kind of crazy that I'm old enough to be able to vote and stuff now, which is pretty cool.
Ian Tolanen is a freshman at MSU, and he says he never really thought about voting before.
I remember being 15, 16, I wasn't thinking about voting at that time, but I'm 18, a lot of my mindset's changed.
For his friend Liam McDonald, voting has been on his mind for a while.
My dad's an immigrant from the United Kingdom, and he's not able to participate in elections and things like that.
Whether voting is on students' minds or not, MSU professor Marty Jordan says Generation Z's vote could change the outcome of this year's election.
If we got half of Gen Z voters to turn out to cast a ballot, that would be a sizable uptick for an off-year election compared to past off-year elections.
However, to understand the full effect Gen Z voters could have on this year's election, we have to go back to 2020.
We're going to have a great red wave.
Our voices and our votes. We must free ourselves from the forces of darkness.
Typically, there's an old maxim in American politics, which is that 70% of 70-year-olds vote, 20% of 20-year-olds vote. Well, 2020 turned that on its head because about more than half of young voters between the ages of 18 and 29 turned out to vote.
Well, will this year's turnout numbers match the same as 2020's? Well, with big ticket items on the ballot and on students' minds like abortion in the governor's race, Professor Jordan says that there's a chance, but it's not certain.
But I would be surprised if it reached the 2020 level. I'm just, trying to be realistic here. It would be great if we met those numbers or exceeded those numbers among Gen Z.
Jordan also added, based on partisan registrations, more Gen Z voters favor the Democratic Party. So if more Gen Z voters turn out to the polls, it could tip the scale to favor the Democratic candidates.
If the same proportion of Gen Z voters that show up tend to be Democrats, then you're going to see a pretty big margin probably for Whitmer as well as other Democratic candidates down the ticket.
That is why city clerks like Jennifer Schuster are working hard to get students registered to vote.
Voting is important, so your voice is heard. Everyone who is qualified should exercise their right to vote.
Although we won't know for sure how many Gen Z voters will show up to the polls until after the election. McDonald and Tolanen both say they will be there.
Excited to hopefully be a part of the change that I want to see and more young people coming to vote.
Michigan is already breaking records compared to the 2018 midterm election. The Michigan Secretary of State says that almost 2 million Michiganders have already requested absentee ballots just a week before Election Day. And today, we wait to see if Gen Z can break the record that they set in 2020.
Speaking of records and data, election night is typically a busy night in our newsroom. Several journalism classes meet together, and there's a lot of learning going on.
Daniel Zivian is live in the newsroom talking to students who are gathering information on the vote. Let's toss it to him to get a taste of the newsroom buzz.
Thank you guys very much. Yep, it is busy here in the newsroom tonight. We've got our class as well as two others in here. Right here are the Journ 300 kids. That's Professors Joe Grimm and Jeremy Steele. They are print journalists for the Spartan Newsroom Online and also might dabble in the state news in print, who are covering the election results live across mid-Michigan, all with their own specific beats. So let's talk to one of them right now. Sydney, could I talk to you for a moment?
Yeah, hey.
So you're Sydney, you're a junior, right?
Mm-hmm, I'm a junior.
Absolutely. And tell us a little bit about what races you're covering tonight.
So my beat is DeWitt, and tonight I am hoping to hear back once results are out from a double candidate in the city of DeWitt for both school board and city council.
Now, what happens for a double candidate if he wins one thing or the other thing? Or actually, better yet, what happens if he wins both?
So it is perfectly legal for him to hold both offices, actually. So if he wins both, he'll get both. If not, I talked to him a while ago. I did a feature on him. That's why we're here now. And he said, whatever happens, he's going to wake up the next day and keep fighting, whether it be on one board or the other, or, none at all.
That's very fascinating. I look forward to hearing more about that. But Sydney's not the only one here as well. First of all, say hi to Professor Jeremy Steele. How's it going tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing terrific. What are you doing right now?
Right now, I am posting a link to this live show.
That's quite meta. All right. Keep at it. And then you're Ashley, right?
Hi.
Can you stand up for a second?
Of course.
Everyone, this is Ashley. Tell us a little bit about what you're covering tonight.
So I am the Ingham County beat, and throughout the semester I wrote features on the new District 15 County Commissioner, Brooke Locke and Monica Schaefer. And so I'm just reporting on the results tonight and just waiting as they come in.
Very exciting. And Cindy and Ashley, again, are just two of the student journalists across Michigan State who are doing all sorts of work tonight, one of the busiest nights of the year for us. But there's so much going on in here. There's also so much going on around campus. Several polling places are open, Brody Hall, I believe the Union as well. Isabella Martin and Hunter Gadwell went out earlier today to take the temperature on Michigan State University's campus. We're going to start with a look at Isabella Martin, who tracked down several of the candidates.
Hey, Danny, the one congressional race everybody seems to be watching is between Republican Tom Barrett and Democrat Alyssa Slotkin. It also happens to be one of the most expensive races in the country. I met up with both of them today on Election Day to see how they're feeling.
Ultimately, this election is about choosing the direction for our country. Are we going to go down the same path that we're on right now of, failed leadership and the high cost of living and crime on the rise and an unsecure border and still have no accountability for what happened in Afghanistan with our troops over there over a year ago? Or are we going to change direction, bring down the cost of living, get inflation under control, expand our own energy independence here in the United States, cut down on crime and secure our border and bring accountability to the administration for what happened in Afghanistan? So those are the two options that voters have. I'm very optimistic that voters are going to choose to change direction because America is fundamentally on the wrong track right now. And I want to bring about a new opportunity and new leadership in Washington to represent families like mine and so many others that have been left behind by this administration over the last 2 years.
I was at Michigan State last night for the rally. I was with our campus organizers the day before that. The student vote is extremely important, and what we see motivating students is the issue of Proposition 3 and Roe v. Wade. People understand that we need to be vigilant about our democracy, and we need to be activated if we want our side to win. And there's no kind of putting your feet up and sleeping on Michigan. If you do that, it's going to go to the other side. So I'm really proud of the state's preparation for all things related to democracy.
Both candidates tell me they're feeling optimistic about the outcome of this election. Here's Focal Point's Hunter Gadwell with how Gen Z voters are feeling today.
Thanks, Isabella. I'm outside IM West with freshman voter Joseph Bolko. Joseph, tell me, why did you vote in today's election?
Well, today I voted because I had a lot of support from my family to do so. They're big into voting, and they understand the importance of it. And so through them, I decided I thought it was a good idea to do so.
And how do you think young voters like yourself are going to impact the outcome of today's election?
Well, historically, young voters have really haven't shown up in elections, and recently I've seen a lot of that on the news, pushing for young voters to come out. So I think that, at least I'm hopeful that this year there'll be a big push with young voters coming out and voting today.
Thank you so much for talking with me. Outside IM West, I'm Hunter Gadwell, Focal Point News.
Thanks, Hunter and Isabella, for those reports from the field. Of course, one of the biggest, if not the biggest question is who will be Michigan's governor?
Yeah, it's been hard to avoid all the political advertisements between the two candidates, incumbent Governor Gretchen Whitmer and her challenger Tudor Dixon. Whether it be TV or radio or YouTube, it's clear that the race shows two completely different viewpoints.
Whitmer and Dixon only appeared 2 times together, however, the first debate in Grand Rapids and the latest one in Detroit. Focal Point's Marvin Pride was there.
They met on a stage once before.
Do you really think books are more dangerous than guns? Do you really think that books pose a greater danger to our kids than gun violence does?
And for their second and closing act, these actors in this real-life drama did not disappoint.
The governor has just been dishonest with you.
Like their first debate, Governor Gretchen Whitmer and Tudor Dixon stayed true to their own scripts, challenging each other on education, roads, and women's rights.
This isn't about me. This is about all the women and girls in our state. This is about the ability to have bodily autonomy, be treated as a full American citizen.
People will decide what they want to do on abortion rights in the state of Michigan. Abortion rights will be decided by Proposal 3, or it will be decided by a judge.
Whitmer and Dixon went down another familiar road in this hour-long debate.
We will work to make sure that there actually is a plan for the roads.
We need to continue this. It doesn't end. Unfortunately, we have to continue to rebuild infrastructure, but we're making headway, and we got to put our foot on the gas.
The two candidates stood only a few feet apart on the Oakland University stage, but their views on education could have not been further apart.
This is something that has been a pillar of my campaign, to bring education back in the state of Michigan. Not only do we want to make sure that parents are involved in education, but we want to make sure that our kids are back on track.
The reason kids were out of school during the pandemic was because we were working off of knowledge from 1918, when kids died from the last global pandemic. As a mom, all I was thinking about was saving the lives of our kids.
Whitmer supporters are cautiously optimistic. Polls find her about 7 points up on Dixon, and moments after the second debate, the governor seemed confident.
We've made record investments in education. We've landed record economic development investment in Michigan, good paying jobs. So we do work well together.
Dixon also felt the debate went well.
I feel tonight went strong. We were able to hold the governor accountable, and she didn't really have any response to her own record.
After the curtain came down on the last debate, both candidates felt they grabbed the audience, and they hope their performance will get applause in the form of votes. In Rochester Hills, I'm Marvin Pride, Focal Point News.
That was Marvin Pride at Oakland University last week. After the debate came a campaign stop, and it featured a former president, and I was there for it. Let's take a look.
When I say big, you say grits! Big! Grits!
Some came for the first time,
I'm excited to feel the energy.
and some have felt this energy before.
We're like a good city block or so away from the entrance.
With the back of the line still continuing to form just 30 minutes before the doors open, the front of the line, you can see the people who arrived here first at 5 a.m. this morning.
Hi, folks.
About 3,000 Michiganders lined up. Some walked with signs.
Because I believe that freedom is on the ballot, especially for women in Michigan.
All to see this.
Hello, Detroit!
Former President Barack Obama paid a visit to Detroit to stump for Governor Gretchen Whitmer and the Democrats' Get Out the Vote campaign.
American democracy is also on the ballot.
He talked about voting rights, inflation, education, and abortion.
If that's not worth 15 minutes of your time, I don't know what is.
And encouraged voters to fight for what they care about.
Booing doesn't help. They can't hear you boo, but they can hear you vote.
The Supreme Court was wrong for what they did when they brought that up. That's the main thing.
That main thing, the fight for reproductive rights, is influencing voter turnout according to Obama and many Michigan Democrats.
We have so many women in authoritative roles and leadership that we cannot undermine those rights. We have the right to do what we wish with our bodies, and that needs to be maintained.
It was all exciting for the crowd.
It was fantastic.
Especially for the first person in line.
Especially when Obama came out.
He's the best.
Yeah.
He's the best.
Yeah.
He's the best.
It's in the hands of voters to determine what happens next.
Our democracy is on the line. This could be our last free and fair election. I'm not even so sure about this election.
If President Obama can come to Detroit on a Saturday morning, I sure as heck can.
In Detroit, Alex Hill, Focal Point News.
As we approach the 9 o'clock hour, results will start coming in, and we are watching several races.
Caitlin Holt-Velour and Anna Mizorowski are live in Studio E with the key races.
Of course, first, most eyes are on the Michigan governor's race between incumbent Gretchen Whitmer and challenger Tudor Dixon. This race has been neck and neck thus far, but we do not have any numbers just yet as votes are still being counted.
Next is the race for Michigan's 7th District incumbent Democrat Alyssa Slotkin is running for re-election against Republican State Senator Tom Barrett. Barrett has denied the results of the 2020 election and has pushed fraudulent claims about the election. Just 2 days ago, Republican Liz Cheney made a stop in Lansing to campaign for Slotkin. It's the first time that Cheney has campaigned for a Democrat. The race has been seen as a toss-up.
And we're watching the ballot measures. Proposal 3 is the right to reproductive freedom in Michigan. The proposal would establish a state constitutional right to reproductive freedom. That term would be defined as the right of the individual to make and carry out decisions regarding pregnancy, which includes prenatal care, childbirth, postpartum care, contraceptive, sterilization, abortion, miscarriage, and infertility care.
Proposal 1 is double-barreled. One part of it requires legislators in top executive office to publicly disclose financial reports. Attached to that is a proposed adjustment to the legislative term limits. Legislators would have 12 years in any combination between the State House and Senate.
Proposal 2 is all about election laws, including state-funded ballot drop-off boxes and 9 days of early voting. But the flashpoint is the proposed right for voters to verify their identities with either a photo ID or a signature. Currently, state law allows for any photo to be used.
All of these races are important, but one that will hit close to home is the race for the MSU Board of Trustees. They've been in the news during their spat with former President Samuel Stanley. But how many MSU students know anything about them?
Daniel Zivian is standing by in the newsroom with that story. Daniel?
Thanks, guys. Getting a hold of the trustees is actually a pretty difficult task. It was especially difficult during the turmoil with President Samuel Stanley. In fact, my interviews took place just days before Stanley tendered his resignation. Take a look. There are thousands of potential voters at MSU, but do students know what they're voting for?
Not exactly, no.
I actually had no idea.
No clue.
I was not aware of that, no.
Wait, what? Off the top of my head, I have no clue. Probably not, no.
Which means that we have more work to do, right?
What these voters don't know is right under their noses near the top of the ballot. Trustees of Michigan State University. But who are these trustees? For recently elected Dr. Rima Vassar, the trustees are an eclectic group with a common goal.
From all our diverse perspectives, I think what binds us is that we all want the best for the university.
The overriding reach is we really try to move the university in a positive direction.
That's Pat O'Keefe, who was elected with Vassar. He highlights wellness and finances as two big priorities, but the board's powers are broad in scope.
So we tend to not be involved in the day-to-day operations, but however, things that pop with, processes, controls, policies, that does come under the strict purview of the board.
Whether or not we decide to raise tuition, right? These are tangible effects, not necessarily for every Spartan, but someone's going to bear that cost, right? So every choice we make, I believe, tangibly affect students.
Of course, those are only two of the positions on the ballot this November. There's also judges, Supreme Court justices, county reps, state reps, national reps, and a governor. If there was a moral to this story, it would be to take your time on Election Day. In East Lansing, I'm Daniel Zivian, Focal Point News. Man, I feel so much different from a few weeks ago when I shot that. Now, the powers outlined by Pat O'Keefe have been under scrutiny over the past few months and will likely adjust in some way under the new board and new president, including interim president Teresa Woodruff as of now. And as of today, the make of the board has been 5 Democrats and 3 Republicans. We'll bring you those results as they come, time permitting. But what do all these races mean? And what do the trends mean? Now, we have a live expert, and Sarah Marilyn is with him virtually in Studio E. Sarah?
Joining us live in the studio is an expert in political science and is an MSU alumni. Dante Cini, thank you for joining us. He's coming to us from NBC New York's 30 Rock. What will your night be like tonight?
Well, I think if it's a close election, seeing a certain amount of pushback or I don't believe these results, or I want to recount, or I want to go to court, some of that's to be expected. It's close race. That wouldn't surprise me. But if it's a really big lead for one candidate or the other, it's really clear that one is out front, then it's disappointing. But I still think that we'll probably see a little bit of it, particularly when it comes to, again, if on the Republican side, if the Republican candidates don't win, it's become part of the approach to elections now, if you don't win, to, especially the candidates you have in that state right now, to challenge the results and maintain that they really did win and the election was stolen from them.
And I attended the Whitmer rally yesterday, and the crowd that gathered was rather small. What does the data show in the interest from college students to vote?
Well, midterm elections in general, it is tough to get younger voters. It depends on how you want to characterize them. You could call them 18 to 29-year-olds or 18 to 34-year-olds, wherever you want to say. It's tough to get them to vote in midterms. It's tough to get them kind of fired up to come out. Presidential elections are different. People get excited to vote in a presidential election. Midterms, a lot of times, college students, they're busy. They've got life going on. They don't even realize they're happening. So Democrats need them. When you look at the vote, the NBC News poll that we had here, it's the one age group where Democrats lead by, and they lead by a lot, is 18 to 34-year-olds. So they need them to turn out. Democrats need them to turn out. Republicans probably rather they stayed home. But if they turn out, that bodes well for Democrats. We'll see when the results come in. If Ingham County turns out, if Washtenaw County turns out, where University of Michigan is, if those voters come out, that's bodes well for Democrats.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be a busy night for you. This is really interesting stuff. Elena and Alex, back to you.
Well, thank you, Sarah and Dante. We've all seen it. Our feeds are filled with information or disinformation about candidates and issues.
What is true? What are the facts? It's sometimes hard to navigate it all. We talked to a Michigan State professor who says all of the false information that bombards us can be put into two categories: misinformation and disinformation. Misinformation is false, but not meant to be harmful, whereas disinformation is spread with the intent of bringing harm.
And if disinformation biases that trust to the wrong person, now the idea of voting is a democratic instrument that really helps communities to self-govern themselves in the best way collapses over time.
So how can misinformation be combated? Well, Professor Bauer stresses to check multiple sources and use credible fact-checking sites like PolitiFact and more.
We'll be back for some final thoughts and one last tour of the newsroom when we come back. Stay right there.
Welcome back to Focal Point's Election Night Special. I'm Daniel Zivian. All night you have heard Alex and Elena go through the results and also stories from around election season. We also have action going on in the newsroom tonight. As you saw earlier, the fine folks at Journ 300. But I am standing with two students who don't make the videos, they don't even write the articles, but they make tomorrow's headlines. This is Jordan and Madison. Could you guys tell me just a little bit about what your class is and what you guys do?
Yeah, so we're from Journalism 336. It's a design class for print and digital media. So we've been working on coming up with the headlines and designing the theoretical front page. That's our assignment that we're going to be working on for the first few weeks here.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of what Madison said, we've just been simulating basically a breaking news situation. This is our first time doing this. It's really fun, so yeah.
All right, and I understand that you guys have been working for the past couple hours on some projects right now, so I don't believe this race has been called, but could you show us your mock-up for a headline of tomorrow?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've just been putting this together. Our professor works for the Detroit News, so we've been, that's the assignment. We're using that nameplate there, obviously not officially for the Detroit News, but yeah, this is just a sample page that I've put together so far. I'm sure it will change as the night goes on as well.
Absolutely. I understand the governor's race right now, for example, is pretty darn close. Now, what is the most difficult part of going into this particular field? Because I myself am not a graphic design person. I'm unfamiliar with your ways. What's the scoop here?
I actually think that it is once we do get the news in, because right now we're just kind of like framing what it could look like, but once we start getting the news in, it's difficult to know where are we going to put certain stuff, how to make our picture look good, and then how does the page just come together once we actually have all the news. Yeah.
Awesome, you guys. And your professor's Rick Epps, right?
Yes.
336? Mm-hmm. I'm 2 for 2. These are the students of Journ 336. My name is Daniel Zivian. You've been looking at the Spartan Newsroom tonight, alive with activity. Alex, Elena, back to you.
Well, thanks, Daniel. We wanted to give you a little taste of what election night looks like around here. We've taken you live to different parts of the state. We've given you a look at the weeks leading up to the election and how it's all in the hands of election workers.
That's true. We hope you enjoyed our time together in this special edition of Focal Point. We'll see you again live Friday, November 18th. Until then, thank you and good night.